Hey guys, today I want to share my tips with you on how you can save money for travel. Of course, only if that's something that you want to do. If you're not keen on that, then this video is probably not going to be for you. My first tip is to look at your life situation. And by life situation, I mean the life that you're currently living. Where are you living? How much money are you making? How much money are you saving? That's actually the more important question. What could you change? What could you do to make a little more money so that you can save more? Look at your expenses. If you're not already keeping track of your expenses, do it for a month or two to see where you are literally burning money. And that, of course, can be in different areas. Another thing that for me personally works really well is to live a suitable lifestyle. That means to live a life according to your values, doing whatever it is that you love doing without getting lost in buying things or doing things that fundamentally don't really matter to you. So really look at your life, look at your expenses, look what you could do to change and to move into a place that's a little bit better. Simply do whatever needs to get done to move into the right direction and to move towards more travel. My second tip is to set up a designated savings account if you don't have one already. Of course, ideally you would have an emergency account in place, you would have other accounts in place for certain expenses. I recommend having a separate savings account for travel because you will be more inclined to save for travel and you will be less likely to use that money for other expenses. Set it up with your bank, set it up with another bank, but make it difficult to retrieve money because you will want to use that money for travel and nothing else. Unless, of course, you will have an extreme emergency and need that money, then by all means withdraw it. But other than that, try to leave that money where it is. My third tip is to simply redefine what travel means to you. And that can be a difficult one depending on where you're coming from. For example, hotels can often prevent you from having the full experience because most likely the food that you will be eating there will be catered to your taste. Everything else will be catered to your taste and needs, and you might simply not be able to experience what you would experience if you were to rent an Airbnb or a local place where actual people are living, because chances are in hotels you will only be surrounded by tourists. Instead, you can opt for hostels, Airbnbs, or even couch surfing if that's your thing. I love it. I personally really love couch surfing. Another thing that I want to talk about is flights. Flights from the US to Europe, for example, can be cheaper than flights within the US. And that's a really big one that oftentimes I think people forget about. When I check flights and I look at the map, sometimes flights to Italy are as cheap as $200, $300, which just blows my mind, versus flights within the US are much more expensive. That of course depends when you look and to which cities you want to fly to. All I want to say is keep your options open. Check flights to somewhere outside the US, or if you're living in Europe, check flights to other places, and you would be surprised what pops up. My fourth tip is find the amount of money you need and set your budget accordingly. At the beginning of each and every month, before you pay your bills, simply transfer money from whatever account you're using to your travel account. In that way, you will be less inclined to not transfer that money because chances are at the end of the month, there might not be a lot of money left to transfer to your travel account. That's why I would do that first thing prior to doing anything else. Also decide on how much money you're going to need for the trip and define how much money you want to save every month, day, or week. That in itself will help you to achieve your goal more easily and will also help you to see when you're off track. Make it your priority. If you cannot make it your priority, then you will probably struggle saving the amount that you need. If there are other things that need to be paid off first, pay those off and make it a priority after all those other responsibilities are taken care of. I do believe though that if you want to make it happen and if you want to make it happen bad enough, then I'm sure you will find a way to make it happen by, as I explained earlier, changing your life situation. Simply make saving for travel your priority, and trust me, if it can be a priority for you, then everything else will just fall into place. My sixth tip and last tip would be to tell your friends and family. Trust me, those people will hold you accountable. Whenever I'm saving for something, especially for traveling, I make it a point to tell my closest friends. Of course, I don't scream it on top of my lungs and tell everyone that I know. I simply share it with my closest friends, and then those very people hold me accountable. Especially my husband really helps me with that and asks very critical questions that are important to stay focused and for me to reach my goal more easily. And that can be whoever you are closest to. Share it with them and they will hold you accountable. Those are my tips on how you can save money for travel. Of course, there are a bazillion ways to go about it. The most important things really is know what you value, know where your values are, and know your priorities. If you are moving into a direction that you don't want to move, chances are your values and your priorities are all jumbled up. Set your values, know your priorities, and whether it's travel or anything else that you may be saving for, it will fall into place. And that is my firm belief. If there is a will, then there is a way. It might not happen immediately. There might be lots of trial and error and failure, but eventually one will get there if one is determined to get there. I hope that made sense. That just sounded really odd. You know what I mean, right? Anyway, this is it for today's video. And yes, you will probably hear kids in the background. My neighbor installed a new balcony that is really, really beautiful and his kids are playing outside. Have a lovely day and see you guys next time.